All right, welcome back. We appreciate your time and company. It's always a pleasure to do this for you each and every morning on Daybreak as we unpack issues that are pivotal in your life as well as mine, looking at issues shaping the news in Kenya and beyond borders. Today, there's going to be that much awaited unveiling and the launch of the Hustler Fund, which was a part and parcel of a very pivotal promise of the Kenya Kwanza administration during their campaign, something that was envisioned to accommodate over 8 million Kenyans who have been blacklisted by different credit rating agencies. That's according to what the government is saying, at least. So we want to unpack this Hustler Fund. Where is it going to come from? What are some of the issues around it? And will it fix what the country is currently facing when it comes to financial inclusion, especially for that person who earns very little? That is what we want to discuss for the next about 1 hour or so. Are you? And
targeting the micro, small and medium enterprises in what the then Deputy President, now President, billed as the address to the challenges faced by small businesses in the country. Honorable Wilokero is the former Mandera County Senator and political economist. Good morning again. Sakwa Bunyasi is the former Member of Parliament, Nambale constituency, and an economist. Thank you for your time and company. And Kuria Kimani is the Finance and the National Planning Committee Chairperson of the National Assembly. Gentlemen, your time is all appreciated. May I begin with you, Honorable Kero? And the Cabinet yesterday in a dispatch said this will end predatory lending, but you are of different view. But how a game changer will this fund be that will be launched by the President later in the day?
Yeah, thank you. I think, as the British say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll see what happens as they roll out this fund. But I think when you look at the objectives of this fund, the Financial Inclusion Fund, in the financial regulations which were tabled by the ministry, and how the fund is in terms of, the terms and the amounts, the size of the fund and being given out and so forth, I think there is a mismatch, really, because the objective set out is that it's going to help the small and medium-sized enterprises on startup, on expansion of business, and so forth. But with the size of funding at 500 to 50,000, and accessing that through the digital platforms, I don't think it will really serve the purposes of the small and medium-sized enterprises. Because when you look at the definition of the SMEs in law, this fund is not going to be of any use to them, really, because those are the businesses where you're looking at businesses that operate about 10 million shillings, 100 million shillings, 50 million shillings. People who need, substantial amounts of money, 500,000 shillings would make a difference to them, 1 million shillings, but not 10,000, 20,000, because when you are given this kind of money, then they will not be actually benefiting. For the micro, the mamamboga and those people who are, pushing carts and small businesses that you would call mamamboga type of business, who wants to restock her stock from the wholesale market. Those kind of businesses, yes. But then you'll just be, for those ones, then you're actually in competition with the other digital creditors that are already there. The Fuliza, for example, already they're giving close to 2 billion daily. And they, in fact, their limit is a bit higher, even up to 70,000. And there are no bureaucracies. You don't have to save a portion. You don't have to, we'll see how the savings and insurance and all those things will come in. But without all those things, and the objective really, of Fuliza is more or less the same as this one, to enhance that financial inclusion, to encourage people to access credit. But for Fuliza, it is free for anything. You can buy it, you can take the money in order to go on holiday, you can use it for school fees, you can use it. Here, the focus seems to be on business. But how would you determine that? If I'm applying for Hustler Fund, 20,000 shillings on my phone, I'm 18 years, I'm registered, my ID can be verified, of course, through the mobile service provider and so forth. But how would you determine how I want to use my money? I could use it for anything else. So would it serve that purpose of business? There are some of the challenges that we will see how they will. But otherwise, I think it's a momentous occasion for Kenya Kwanza government, because it's not always easy to see a government that rolls out their manifesto or their election pledges, or that early. And so I'm sure many Kenyans would find it interesting that these guys have been able to, but we'll see how the rollout will be in terms of the size of the fund that will roll out and so forth. But I think it is a momentous occasion, and I think we'll see how it goes out.
Mheshimiwa Sakwa, let me borrow from your mind as an economist a bit. I want to understand and just pick up from what Mheshimiwa there said. What's the difference now, this Hustler Fund with the other funds that we already have? I'm looking at funds such as the Youth Fund, the Women Fund, the Wezo Fund. I mean, what is it about the Hustler Fund that makes it stand out, that makes it something that will fix or address a gap that is existing in society, if in any case there is any?
I think there is a difference. First, I want to agree with my colleague Bill Kero that, as like many things, the test is in the detail, is in the pudding, is the eating, and so on. Having said that, I think it's a great idea to go the direction that the president, the current administration, is intending to do. But to answer your question first, the major difference is that these other funds are highly regulated, very institutionalized. The requirements are tough to meet by ordinary, let's say, younger generation in the community. The Women Fund, for example, the Youth Fund, Wezo Fund was a little lighter in its requirements, but it completely lacked an administrative structure to be able to collect the money back. This Hustler Fund, the way I understand it, is that it's going to go in a notch lower than that. It's not going to go in anywhere near title deeds or formal incorporation or anything of that kind. You're going to be able to deal, let's pick it up as I understand it. You're going to be able to deal with the limited bureaucracy, and to be a very light bureaucracy, we are assured, directly with you, almost the level you deal with FLISA, perhaps only slightly more structured. If you had told people about a FLISA type program a few years ago, they would think, no, that's not going to happen. And here we are now transacting at a level close to a couple of billion a day with people that we don't even know exactly where they live, but they are connected by technology and so on. And if you looked at something earlier in our history, when they said we would have, President Kibaki, when he had said before he became president, we can have free primary education, people laughed at it and said, no, that's not going to happen. He came in and started doing. My point here is that I think the strategic objective is great. We are dealing with the bottom of the pyramid, which in our case, sadly, is probably very generous. If you leave out the youth, it's probably going to be something like 50% of the population. Okay. I'm not so good at numbers. I leave that to Bill Carrot on that. And which has not been targeted specifically. But it's all experimentation. It's experimentation on a grand scale, so to say. Its success is going to depend on what flexibility is built around it as we go in, what learning comes out of it, what modifications can be made. And lastly, something like, 500 shillings a day, I had an MP deride it. And I just said, I don't think she lives in this country. All right. 5 shillings a day is quite a bit for Mamboga on the market. I have dealt with market women, they're mostly women, who say, they say, well, I had an illness and I have lost all my capital. How much was your capital? And they say I needed about 300 shillings a day. If I have seen in West Africa, where many years ago they had systems like this, a bit more advanced at that time than us, in which there was daily borrowing in the marketplace, through partly institutionalized, partly self-organized arrangements in the big markets in Accra, in which the daily borrowing is less than even these 500 shillings we are dealing with. You take it in the morning, you pay it in the evening. So we should not, I think that before we pour cold water on this, let's see how they implement. If we get big bureaucrats out there, who are looking for the big cars and the sitting allowances and so on, they will take their eye off this. Okay,
thank you. Honorable Kuria Kimani, then, because we are in the midst of austerity measures as announced by the government to cut down on spending, local travels, and also foreign, some by 100%, some by 75%, meaning the government isn't spending. And you want to open up the fiscal space. How practical will this be within these measures that the government has put in place, and at a time when it's targeting what it says the micro, small and medium enterprises by the Hustler Fund?
Thank you very much. What the government is trying to do is taking out the spending from where it's not necessary to the drivers of the economy. And there are certain measures the government is taking about foreign travel. First of all, to whom does foreign travel benefit? It is the principal secretary, it is the big boys in government. Who takes the profits? It is the airlines, it is the international hotels. How about taking that money and bringing it to the bottom of the economy, where we've noticed that the highest in terms of economic growth and in terms of mobility of factors of production is at the bottom of the pyramid. And when you're doing the campaigns, the Kenya Kwanza campaigns, we realize that the biggest challenge we have at the bottom of the pyramid is access to capital. I think it was Bello say that the difference between this Hustler Fund and Fuliza is that this is just a government Fuliza. But I'd like to bring some maths in here. For you to just access, I'm talking about access Fuliza, you access it at a facilitation fee of 7.5%. So just to access the fund, you are charged 7.5%. Of the amount you access. So if you want to borrow, say, 10,000 shillings, the facilitation fee is 7.5% of that. The interest rate is between, I think, 150% per annum. If you talk about other local facilities that are available on the ground, I was speaking this morning with one of my friends called Watene. Watene is an expert of table banking in a village called Gatora in Elbagon. And so his role, what he does every day, is to go to these like women groups and then organize them into table banking, then get that money, and then he helps with the accounting in terms of how they borrow the money. And I was asking him, at what rate does this savings, do you borrow, at what rate do you lend back to these people that borrowed? And he was telling me it's at 10% per month. So that means that is 120% per annum. And talking about, according to now the dynamics here, that Mamboga or in Elbagon, that is the lowest interest rates they have at 120% per annum from their own savings. So you can see now how revolutionary this fund is going to be if you're bringing down interest rates from 120% to 8% per annum. And on the issue about, is this going to unlock the small and the medium enterprises? Because the focus, what we're rolling out today, or the capping of 50,000 shillings. By the way, I was reading the regulations that we were discussing yesterday in Parliament, and there's no mention of 50,000 shillings. I think it's the President who said, as for starters, as we start to roll out this, because again, what you're rolling out today, there's going to be a lot of adjustments and improvements as we now make the fund practical. But it said that we start with 50,000. So 50,000 is what we are rolling out today, or that is a start capital. Okay. But there's a whole new...
Hang on, Kuria Kimani, because there are a lot of very specifics, and this is on the regulations, and it's between 500 Kenya shillings to 50,000, loan at 8% interest, compulsory 5% savings. That is amount. And the momentum on 50,000, it's the maximum. You talked about Fuliza, for example. It charges 25 shillings a day. Daily for the loans of 25,000 Kenya shillings and 70,000, yet it has an extra 20,000 on the limit, for example, as included in Fuliza. And
they give the first 3 days free.
How practical is that mathematically? Because the regulations are very clear as to what's charged.
The regulations, no, I'm looking at the regulations here, and it talks about 8% per annum. And for the, unless we're talking about a different thing, for the physical inclusion fund, the regulations of 2022 that were tabled yesterday by the chairperson for delegated, the delegated committee. So in short, what he's saying, the fact that we're talking about the rates and the cost of borrowing, that for me is already revolutionary. Because for a very long time, we never knew how much we were paying for all these digital loans, for Tala and for Branch and for all these people. But now, just by opening this Hustlers Fund, we now have a conversation in this country about what is the cost of borrowing. And therefore, even as we roll out this fund to the market, we've seen, for example, the commercial sector. We talk about Equity Bank saying that they're going to borrow from that. We talk about NCBA saying that now this fund is going to provide learning lessons for them, and they're able now to, those customers that will have a good credit rating can now graduate from the Hustlers Fund to all these other commercial loans. So we're saying that for once we have started a conversation about what is the rate of borrowing in this country and how do we bring that down that rate of borrowing.
Yeah, I want to allow Mheshimiwa to weigh in on that, and I'll get back to you on something that you just said. Mheshimiwa,
yeah, you see, you know, this thing, as opposed to what Kenya Kwanza has been saying, there's nothing revolutionary about this fund. I mean, let's be honest. For the people whom we are targeting, the bottom of the pyramid, this fund is not new because they're already, the Fuliza and other similar digital credit providers are doing it. And I don't think, I think government needs to look at exactly what the reality is. They should not say things that are not there. For example, if you are taking Fuliza loan, the original concept was a loan of 3 to 7 days maximum. And let me tell you, the people at that level, they are borrowing for 3-4 days. You are buying today, you need 1,000 shillings, you collect it, you sell these things in the evening, you sell by tomorrow morning, you return that thing. So it's not about people taking a loan for a year. You know, and the average so far, even after COVID, for Fuliza has not gone beyond 14 days. Average is 14 days. You know, and you're talking of 500, 600 billion in a year that is being taken, you know, through Fuliza. And the rate of interest, if you look at the maintenance fee from 1st of November for Fuliza, it's 25 shillings if you're borrowing anything between 2,500 up to 70,000 shillings. So if I am taking a loan of 50,000 shillings at 25 shillings per day, you can calculate, it comes to only 9,000 shillings I'm going to pay, what they call maintenance fee, which is interest. That would come to 18%. So if here I'm going to pay 8%, I'm going to save another 5%. You know, so ultimately, yes, it will be cheaper. But for the people who are borrowing, they're not looking at an annual loan. People are looking at a situation where they're borrowing money today.
Quick fix money.
You know, yes, for a couple of days. Do this today, buy this thing, sell tomorrow, return that money, get another. This is the way. So somebody can take actually a loan of Fuliza 4-5 times a day. You know, and that's the essence of this thing. It's not about an annual loan where, you know, you look at the terms. So it's misplaced if you look at it from that point. So if you are taking a short-term loan of 2,000-3,000 shillings, what you're looking at is really that liquidity. It's not as much how much you're going to be charged for 3-4 days. But when you look at it annually and you annualize it, then you'll find it is expensive. But I think for the people who are doing this thing, the reason why they're taking it so much and it's so successful is because they're not looking at the annual aspect of it. They're looking at the urgency of the need. And, you know, and so it's not that whatever. However, I think the issue really is not even about the size of the 50,000 or whatever. But the thing is you are simply bringing a fund that is going to compete with an existing fund, you know, funds that are already existing in that category. What Kenyans need, I think, is also to provide something for the main source of employment in this country is the small and medium-sized. These are the people who are doing businesses $500,000 and above.
All right. Mheshimiwa, because we're taking a break in a while, I just want you to respond to something. The government, from my understanding, is very well aware that there are other you know, such arrangements going on like the Fuliza. But I'm looking at the dispatch from Cabinet. I want you to respond to what they seek to fix. And they say that the Hustlers Fund is part of the administration's answer to the predatory lending that historically has denied many households the opportunity to make a rightful contribution to nation building. The fund is expected to offer the much needed relief to 8 million Kenyans who have been blacklisted by the credit rating agencies. Yes, there is Fuliza, there is others, but what if you fail to pay? We're looking at the interest rate. We're also looking at the consequences that come when you fail to pay on time. This is what the Kenya Kwanza administration seeks to fix. What is your response to?
Yes, I think in that context, of course, it's much better because here you're not going to have, and I think the issue of the Credit Reference Bureau has been addressed to a large extent, and I think some of the digital credit providers have already themselves agreed to write off. Last week, for example, they wrote off 11 billion of outstanding credit because they realized there's going to be competition. So I think in that context, yes, that you're not going to be criminalized, although it says in the regulations that there's going to be penalties for those who misuse and so forth. But I think the fact that they've introduced a credit scoring system, which will be the main determinant whether how much you'll get. If you take 1,000 today and pay back again on 3-4 days on time, your credit scores become positive. Then you'll be allowed to borrow more and more and increases. But if your credit scoring, I think in that context, the structure, and we'll see how it works. But so I think in that context, I don't think there is a dispute that it would stand. But you know, when you look at the bigger picture, I think that it's going to be not going to be easy for them to compete with also these other ones because of the simplicity of access.
Thank you.
The access to the fund. Yeah.
I mean the swiftness. That's what you're talking about. The impact thereafter. Honorable Sako Bonyasi, when we get back from the break, of course, we continue and proceed with the discussion here on the broadcast. And on the 7-member board, the structure, the infrastructure in place, of course, and talking about the targeting and how this seeks to reboot the economy, talking about the place of corruption and how that can further be addressed to save a third of the country's budget, which goes to waste through leakages in the financial systems of the country. You're watching Daybreak on Citizen Television. Thank you for staying with us. And later, toward the tail end of the broadcast, we will sample your feedback. The hashtag on Twitter is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422. At Citizen TV Kenya, at Ayub Abdikadir, and at Safin_Acheng. The discussion continues after the break. Stay tuned.